We had Pierce and Jacob in Virginia, very close to where we lived. And we moved here when they were in first grade.
They were identical twins. They were very, very close, and they would not do anything without each other. They were like bookends, actually, I guess you could say.
They did all their grade school in Chemong and came from middle school to Shawnee.
They had a bunch of friends. They were very popular in high school. They were big football stars here at Shawnee, and they had a lot of great friends, a lot of good kids we'd see all the time. They would come by the house.
They were 10, I believe, about 10 when they started playing, and it went on from there. MYAA football. When they graduated, Pierce didn't get a scholarship or anything. He just went to Widener to play football.
During one of the football games at Widener, Pierce got had a really bad shoulder separation break. They had to go in and do emergency surgery the next day, and that ended his football career, which was devastating for him because they had such a great love for the sport and playing it from little up. And then after the surgery, he was in so much pain, they put him on pills, Oxy, and from that day on, he was never able to, get off, break the habit, and it just led into other things.
Drugs were never anything we sat down and talked about. As they got older, I did think, that maybe they would get a young girl pregnant or, would have a horrible car accident or anything like that, something like that. But never thought that they would go the route of taking drugs and becoming addicted.
Once they got into the kind of the part of their life when they were doing the drugs, most of their friends disappeared. We never saw them or heard from them, and every now and then we'd run into a shady character that we wouldn't know who it was, and which just kind of let us know or told us that something was going on, because all their true friends were such great kids, and these people, you could tell, just weren't the kind of person that you would want to have as a friend.
They had fixed up our basement, the two of them, when we were living down there, and the dog would bring out socks loaded with cash.
Pills.
Cash and pills too, yes.
And you were like, okay, there's something going on here.
We were going to probably try to get them sent out of the state and get them to a rehab to get them cured once and for all. But a couple of days later, then this whole thing came down with them, being involved in these robberies, which we had no idea at all that they were doing that for the drugs, and to have the drugs and the money.
In their secretive talk, I heard them say they're watching us, and I just assumed if it wasn't the police that were watching them, that it was drug dealers or something that were watching them. So that was a little scary, and that was shortly before they were arrested. First time we saw police at our house was the day they were arrested, 2 days after Christmas. We were just awestruck, had no idea. We knew they were having trouble with drugs, had no idea at all that they had gone as far as robbing pharmacies. That was just a total blow-your-mind experience, that this drug had taken them to do that.
It just rips your heart right out. I mean, you just cannot imagine the feeling and how tough it is, and even to this day, I mean, it just really is something that you'll never forget. And then with everything else that happened, it was something that, like your worst nightmare, not even your worst nightmare, I guess I could say. Prison's a tough place, and you learn to do what you got to do to get through. My sons were actually in very, really good physical shape. They got cleaned up pretty quick after they were there, even though they were there for a long time. They worked really, really hard, and they got through it, and that's pretty much what everyone has to do there, because it's the survival of the fittest, more or less there. It's definitely not a cakewalk there. It's tough.
We went every weekend. Because of the visitations, they generally overlapped one day, so we'd visit one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. That pretty much consumed our weekend because of the time that you had to be super early to register and just waiting to be then entered into the prison to see either one of them. So it was a very long process, and then you had an hour to 2 hours of visiting, and by the time you got home, the day was pretty much shot.
It's not just them getting through it, it's us getting through it. It was really, really tough. I mean, it's a long, long, long haul when you take that many years of them not being around. You know, Christmases at home with just my wife and I, my daughter, holidays, 3 of us. It all, I mean, and again, we were talking about their friends, and their friends, only a couple of their true friends would go back and see them and visiting them, maybe 1 or 2. The rest of them all disappeared, as well as our friends that we had. It was kind of hard to, you know, you really learn who your true friends are when a tragedy like this strikes, because people just leave because they don't want to be involved, they don't want to know anything or hear anything, and it really does hurt you a lot. It really does. And it leaves a pretty good scar. Jacob was in a work release program. He had months to go before he was released. He was living in a halfway house, and he was going to work every day to a big cold packer. He was actually in a halfway house down in the Vineland area. So he was down there, and one night he was, we got a call that they had taken him to the hospital down there because he wasn't able to swallow. And it was in the winter, and we rushed down to find out that he had a tumor in his esophagus, which ended up being stage 4 esophageal cancer.
They had to send him back to prison so he was able to go to the hospital. He was on a ward that was really for dying people. They were supposedly helping, but they really didn't in our son's case. The state hospital that they were in, it was just really a place for him to die, because they didn't know how to handle a young man who only had months to live. And it was very difficult to see him in that hospital too, very difficult.
I stepped forward, I hired another lawyer, another high-powered lawyer, and said, we have to get Jacob out early or we're not gonna get him out of here. He's not gonna make it. We got him out, and we immediately took him to MD Anderson Cooper, where they took charge and really started to help him a lot. I mean, really started bringing him around. They said they could never cure the esophageal cancer because it's not curable, but it is manageable if you get it quick enough. Well, unfortunately, they didn't get it quick enough, but he was able to live about another year with us, and we thought he was doing really well. We thought he was going to live longer. He got married, which was great. My daughter-in-law's still with us. My son Pierce was in course in prison for the longest run. He was selected, which was another honor for them, to be in Project Pride, which they only picked two males and 2 females every couple years to go around all over the state of New Jersey and talk about this, tell their story and talk about addiction and try to help people. Lauren was the one young lady in Project Pride, besides another one, and then Pierce was the gentleman and another gentleman. And after Jacob got out, Pierce had Jacob contact Lauren, and that's how they kind of met and got together, and then they ended up getting married. So that was kind of a nice story, a little bit of a light at the end of this terrible tunnel, and it was interesting, very interesting. So that's how they met, and they were married, but unfortunately they were only married 3 weeks, and then Jacob passed away. So that's tough, still tough.
Towards the very end, we had a hospital bed in our family room, and he was on hospice care. And just to watch him, not being able to breathe, not being able to do anything on his own, it was a godsend that his life was ended when it was.
Pierce, which was very touching, told his brother in his dying days that his firstborn son was going to be named after him. And they carried on the tradition, J-E-R. They named him Jacob Emery Reed, and he was born on this past Halloween night, and he's doing great.
So if you want to experiment, that's up to you, but when you find yourself going down that road, you got to have somebody to hold your hand and make sure you get through it.
Don't ever say it can't happen to you, because it can happen to anyone.
Confide in someone else to get help. That's something our boys did not do. They kept it very much close to them for as long as they could. So I think that's a big part of just seeking help.
This addiction thing is such a terrible thing that, again, you just really, really have to think of what you're doing, and you really need to, if you have a problem, get help immediately and move forward with it, because it's just not about you, it's about a lot of the lives that you affected forever.
All you got is your family, you know, so you just go day by day and everything's fine. You know, you have your hardships, whether they're big or small, but that's your family, so you just push on.